Ultimately, it's not a matter of if schools should reopen, it's simply a matter of how. They must fully open and they must be fully operational. And how that happens is best left to education and community leaders.
So that is Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos yesterday reinforcing the administration's directive to reopen schools for in-person learning this fall. But as coronavirus grips Arizona, can teachers and students and staff return safely? The Arizona Education Association surveyed more than 7,000 teachers, and of those who replied, they found about 8 out of 10 Arizona teachers say they do want to return to an on-campus setting, but only after health experts say it's safe. So how do we determine that? Joining us this morning is Joe Thomas, the president of the Arizona Education Association, to lend us some insight. And obviously looking at this survey, you realize teachers have a passion for what they do. They do it for a reason, and they want to connect with these kids. But given the circumstances, what would you need to see to feel safe about sending teachers and campus staff back?
Well, what educators want is what everybody in the state wants. We want to see this virus suppressed. We want to see the spread diminished, and we're seeing the exact opposite of that. And so until Arizona, all Arizonans adopt the behaviors that will slow the spread of this virus and make our society safe, we can't go back into our classrooms with our students. Nobody wants to be back there more than educators. It's our office. It's where we do our work. It's where we take students from point A to point B. But we're not ready to put students, our own students, into that risky environment, and we certainly don't want anyone to have to deal with the virus if it were spread from a school.
And your sentiments seem to be very in line with the statement we got from Superintendent Hoffman yesterday, pretty much suggesting that we're just not there yet. She can't assure the staff or the teachers or the students that they would be safe returning to the classroom at this moment in time. But to play devil's advocate, we heard from the president that maybe federal funding could be pulled, could be tied to returning to the classroom. If it were mandated, if it does come to fruition, what could be done on behalf of the state, on behalf of the districts, to make it a safer or more comfortable environment?
Well, it's really up to the citizens of Arizona. This is not an education crisis. This is a health crisis. We have to get the spread of this virus under control. And we have nations that have much less spread than the state of Arizona does, and they're having outbreaks in summer camps. They're having outbreaks at their schools. They're closing those down, and they have the luxury of being able to be outside for some of their classes. You can't do that in Arizona in August. So we're going to be in an online learning format and we're going to offer the best education that we can. It's going to be very different than what we experienced in the fourth quarter of last year, which was more kind of a crisis teaching model as we had to kind of turn on a dime and try to do what we could. But we're going to go into this with our eyes open. And as a parent myself, I just don't expect us to be back in schools for at least the first quarter.
Well, Joe, many of the districts have already offered a hybrid program where some students would return to campus and some students would choose distance learning. I assume they imagine then that changes the student-teacher ratio in the classroom and maybe makes it a safer environment. Do you expect that actually not to happen, or are you comfortable with that model, assuming that maybe half of the students would select to stay home?
I think that we're eventually going to transition through a hybrid model back to in-person schooling, but all anyone has to do is look at the data that comes out from the Department of Health Services, and Arizonans are still 3,000 more every day contracting this disease. Our hospitals are full. We don't want to put our own employees in that position. We don't want to put our students in that position, and we don't want them to take this home to their parents. So a hybrid model makes sense when it's ready to unveil that. And in a rapidly changing scenario, we don't know when that's going to be. We lost an educator who was doing distance learning with a couple of educators. That story is kind of rippling through the ranks of educators right now, confirming their worst fears that no matter how safe you try to be and your colleagues try to be right next to you, you can still spread this disease adult to adult inside the schools.
Joe, very last thing and very quickly on time. Supplies, school supplies are often in major demand and teachers often having to out-of-pocket spend, as we know, in a traditional setting. Do you know that if there's been any special spending, buying, purchasing to stock up on cleaning supplies or protective equipment specifically for public schools?
We have federal relief dollars that came in that can be used for that. Let's remember that we were in an underfunded, overcrowded system before this virus came in, and now we have a new threat and new procedures that we have to spend resources to try to contain and make safe for our students. So we're going to need all the help that we can get, and we have the rainy day fund where we can tap into to do that. But we're definitely going to need more resources coming into schools if we're going to confront this in a safe manner.
All right, Joe Thomas, I'm sure we will speak again. Thank you so much for your insight representing the Arizona Education Association.
Thank you.